Welcome to the Thriving Artist Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylin Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for being a faithful listener to this podcast. Or if you're new here, we want to say hi. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kaylin Butine, one host of this podcast, and my favorite drink to order at a coffee shop is an Americano with a splash of cream. It's a little boring, but what can I say? I like the predictable, boring, beautiful, reliable, strong cup of coffee.
Oh, we're a match made in heaven. I'm literally the Americano of the art world. I'm Jamie Smith. I'm your second host, and I'm even more boring. My favorite drink is basically decaf tea. So as my husband says, it's just brown water. And if I'm going to a coffee shop, I get real fancy and I get a decaf London Fog with oat milk. Truly living.
I think you're a little bit fancier than I am, Jamie, because you have a cool, well, I guess I'm the Americano, you're the London Fog. We have these special names, but okay, we're getting off track. The point is we're here
This is not a coffee podcast.
No, we're here to talk about critique. And I wanted to start with, talking about hot beverages, because I just think critique is like something that is so good when you have something comforting in your hand, a warm cup of coffee, a cup of tea. Coffee and good conversations really go together. Maybe some of you looked at the title of this episode that did not include the word coffee, but it did have the word critique, and you were like, oh, I'm not going to listen to that one. Well, good for you for still listening, because if you're here, you're listening. We know that critique can be a dirty word in the art world. It can be this like hard thing, especially for emerging artists who have heard these horror stories of, students sort of getting ripped to shreds by these egotistical, narcissistic critiquers who are in these like stuffy university programs. I just want to say that I went to grad school and had lots of critiques in grad school, and many of them were actually quite gentle and were quite generous. There were some that, were a little brutal, not too bad, but most of them were gentle, generous, and they were useful.
I think that you hit kind of the word that is, for me, when I think of critique, what I hope it is this idea of good conversation.
Yes.
And if it feels like a good and deep conversation around your work, that is only positive. That is actually something that's really, really important. And it's something that we try to create a lot at Thrive Together Network. We have a program called Crit Cruise, and we are starting enrollment for that program. So we kind of wanted to share our lens, our thoughts on what critique means to us and why it's important. Why do we run a program that's all about this? Because we really believe that critique can really change your art for the better. It can be gentle, it can be respectful, and it can make your work more meaningful. It's really hard when we are just making things on our own and we're then putting them out into the world, and you're hoping people see your work and it resonates with them and inspires conversation. There's a lot of hoping that happens when it just goes from studio to the outside world. And we believe critique and feedback can kind of be that middle space. It can hold that idea of being this sort of, I think in many ways, a game changer, so that you can understand what that work is going to be like out in the world. So we think it's a very important and wonderful thing.
Yes, Jamie, I love that. And what I love about our Crit Crew program that we offer at TTN is that it's a small group experience where you get to join together with other artists. And that group of artists spends time looking at your work, looking at each other's work, reflecting, having those good conversations. So you're also like kind of honing this muscle of responding to other people's work as you do have this crit crew experience, right? You're saying, well, here's what I think about your piece. And, you're not just receiving feedback, you're getting to have it be an exchange where you're sort of strengthening your muscles of looking at other people's work and giving them feedback as well. So it's this really organic, reciprocal relationship, which I like.
Yeah. And the way we've kind of set up Crit Crew, just because not everyone might be familiar with that, is that you're in a small group. So you are part of 4 other artists. So you get to do that practice of showing your work to other artists, but also giving feedback as well. Mm-hmm. And your group is led by a mentor. And these mentors, we are so honored to work with them. They're practicing working artists that we've, put together a training program, and they're sort of helping us facilitate your group with your other artists. And then there's a visiting artist that the mentor has connected with to come in and do the actual critique. So you're actually getting critique in 3 ways over 9 weeks, which I think is really special because we don't just want one person's opinion. And that's what happens in these sort of university settings. You're just looking for that university professor or that one gatekeeper or gallerist. And I think that's when it can be damaging. But when you're kind of in this ecosystem of different perspectives and different types of people looking at your work, to me, that's extremely powerful.
Absolutely, Jamie. I love that so much. And I think the way you described it, which was so clear too, is that we're giving sort of these different ways of getting the feedback, right? You have this visiting artist who comes in and they don't have a relationship with you. You have your mentor who's sort of facilitating the group. And then you have your peers, your little artist buddies within your group. So there's also these different layers of relationship within the little ecosystem of your crit crew, which I think is great. So let's walk our listeners through the 5 ways that we feel like critique can really change your art for the better, and help you feel more empowered and strengthened as an artist. So I'm going to start with number 1, is that critique can help you understand what others are seeing when they look at your work. This is really important for artists because we spend so much of our time looking at our work ourselves, right? We look at the work far more than other people typically look at our work. And all of that looking can really become stale. We kind of just fall into these patterns of seeing our piece or our work in the same way. I know even for me, it's like I can literally feel my brain sort of moving me through, the visual pattern of how I look at a piece. And it becomes like this worn road, like this rut that I just go on every single time. And I'm missing like these other things that might be there. So one of the things that I love about critique is that others are sharing what they see when they look at your work. And this can be so powerful because it's like they are, saying over here, smell these roses. Like, did you notice you have this over here? And this is so beautiful. And this like little moment. And it's like, you never, you're just so busy carving that road. You like never sort of notice those beautiful wildflowers off the side. Excuse my crazy metaphor, but that just is the way that I'm thinking of it, right? This like,
well, we're too close to it, right?
Yes,
we need to zoom out and be shown those wildflowers. And it takes sometimes an actual other human and to do that and kind of point that out. And I know for me, when I show my work, it is so powerful. It is so scary, but a big part of that is because I love hearing what other people see in my work, have to say about my work. But I will say it's way less risky to have this sort of critique happen before it just goes studio to audience. So I really love this idea of critique being this middle ground that can kind of help prep you and build confidence into actually showing your work.
Yes, if only we could have critique on every single piece we put out in the world, right?
Why we need art buddies. Maybe we
Yes.
can.
Yes, that's why we need the network. So, Jamie, I'm going to take us to number 2. The second way critique can change our art for the better is that it will root us deeply in our art lineage. So, we don't always have all of this encyclopedia of knowledge of really understanding art history and understanding exactly where our work fits into the canon of art history. Learning all of that, we should know some of that. We should have some big ideas, but all of that learning can take a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources, money to spend, in galleries, museums, to buy fancy art books, right? So when you're kind of joining together in a group, you get to pool those resources, you get to pool that knowledge and talk about those things together. We do think artists should do that research themselves, but critique also gives you like a step up in, giving you some of that feedback, giving you some of that direction that can help you see those connections within your work now to the way that your work is connected to the greater sort of art world and art lineage of artists who have come before you. So, and some mentors, the really good mentors, I think, will even put together a list of resources for you. They'll give you links, they'll give you articles to look at. Most of the mentors, all of the mentors in our Crit Crew program do this. So whatever your art background, whether you went to art school or not, I just think it's really helpful to have others guiding us towards these deeper connections instead of just relying on our own, knowledge to get us there. Just having others help us, root ourselves in our art lineage is so beautiful and useful.
And it's so amazing too when what we're going for is confirmed. So you might have a very strong sense of your art lineage or your art muses. And I do find it so wonderful when I've shown work or gotten feedback and my, reference points have been made. I look at a lot of Art Nouveau work. And so when that is pulled in the conversation without me prompting, it's a real confidence boost of, yes, this work is saying what I'm hoping it's saying. So
yes.
There's a lot about, the research aspect that can be helpful to pushing your work and also the confidence aspect of what you're already doing, which I love.
Yes, such an important point.
And another way that critique can really change your art practice for the better and your artwork is that it opens you up to new materials and processes. So just like we can get stuck in our way of thinking and our way of seeing, we can also get stuck in our materials because of course we're going to go to what we're naturally using and good at. It's hard too to spend the money on new things when you're not sure if that's actually going to help. But having a small group of artists, especially in this format, and the visiting artists come in and give feedback can be so helpful of where to even start to learn about these new materials.
Yes, absolutely, Jamie. I have learned so much about materials just from being in conversation about my work with others and having to go through the process of explaining how I make something, right? So like even that just kind of going through the process and thinking through, well, I start with this and then I add this material and then I do this, kind of explaining all of that for other artists just opens up this like shop talk that artists love. Like they're like, oh, so that's how you made that. And then have you ever thought of adding this at this step? Or, do you know about this material? You can buy it here. Like that sort of like juicy material share conversation is like so rich.
Artist shop talk is the best. That's where you need the coffee and the hot beverage. That is the funnest.
Absolutely. And I just think that is one of the beautiful things about Crit Crew is that we just can't always get those conversations on our own. And so having that be a part of the Crit experience is really great. So let me take us into number 4. Our fourth way that we believe critique can change your art for the better is that it can guide you towards your next steps. So again, doing this work alone on your own, we can develop into these patterns of thinking, into these ways of working that become really habitual. And critique kind of acts as this shaking things up, right? We, all of these new sort of opinions about our work and references or suggestions are kind of in our brain. When we have a cold read critique type experience, which if you've never heard that term, that's when somebody just literally drops in, they give you a cold read, they tell you what they think about your work, and then they leave. This happened to me quite a bit in grad school. That was kind of part of the grad school model. When you have an experience like that, it can feel really brutal because, there's no sort of relationship, there's no context. You're kind of just like feeling like this person doesn't really know you, right? The way that we do critique in Crit Crew is this longer arc. It's a 9-week program. So there's, a meeting each week where you're kind of going in this flow of like, well, this is where I started and this is where I'm going and this is where you gave me the feedback and here's what I changed from that, right? There's these different layers of conversation that happens over time, and it really provides this guidance and this stability rather than, that brutal punch from the cold read, right? And we also always include making a plan as part of our crit experiences. So, you're talking with your mentor not only about what the work is doing, but also like where you're going to go next, right? What are your sort of next steps for your plan? We do have to, of course, make decisions for ourselves as artists, but doing that decision-making, processing through the next steps in supportive community is just really beautiful and so helpful. It goes back to that idea of accountability that we as artists need.
Totally. And I think that goes right into our last point, our number 5, which is critique also leads to you nourishing your artist identity. So just to like really piggyback on everything you just said, that, having this longer relationship creates time and gives space to have this nourishing and uplifting experience rather than that fast feedback. Fast feedback, there's a place and a time for that, but having some time to build a relationship is going to help you build that artist identity, which we're all working, hard to build up and kind of step into our power as artists. So I do think, having critique in a thoughtful way over a long term can really help you do that.
Yeah, everybody in your group knows you're an artist and they acknowledge your identity as an artist. And that has so much power and worth that just kind of gets ingrained within you week after week. So this whole crit experience is really nourishing because you're developing these skills, developing the skills of talking and sharing about your own work and also what you see and, what suggestions you have for the other artists in your group. You're making all of these connections, you're learning so much. And all of that only nourishes and affirms your artist's identity, right? So if you want to join our Crit Crew program, we would love to have you join us. It truly is a life-changing experience. I feel kind of dorky saying that, but there have been so many ripple effects from this experience. We've run Crit Crew, 7 or 8 times now in our community, and just like seeing, sort of the ripples of like, these people are doing group shows and these people went on to do this. And it's just amazing the way the friendships and, the work grows over time when you use sort of the support of a program like this as these mile markers to help you make big changes in your practice, right? So we would love for you to join us. Enrollment is currently open right now as you're listening to this episode. Spots do fill up pretty fast. We're limited to only 40 spots. And we would love for you to sign up before the deadline of February 26th to ensure that you get to participate in this round. We will be offering this program again in the fall of 2023, but we would love for you to join us this spring.
We really believe in critique. We really believe in community, of course, and having time and space for you to grow as an artist. So we're really excited. You can check out all the information at thrivetogethernetwork.com. You can sign up there and learn more.
As always, we are here for you. We are cheering you on, and we believe in the work you are doing to be a thriving artist.